Hello, Andrew here, and in today's video I'll be sculpting a character bust of my mascot out of polymer clay. We'll get started right after this. The first thing I'm going to do is make a base for my character bust. So I'm using these foil sheets, and they say they're great for leftovers, wrapping sandwiches, and so much more. So we're going to put that to the test. And the reason why I'm doing a base out of foil is I want this character bust to be about 6 inches tall, roughly. And I don't want to use that much clay or even scrap clay, so I'm going to bulk it up with foil first, and then I will cover that with polymer clay. So what I want to do is do obviously the head, a small neck area, and then the shoulders, and roughly a little bit of the lower body. I don't want to do any arms. I'm not really a fan of character busts that have arms or partial arms. I just think it looks weird. And maybe armless character busts look weird to people, and that's fine. But I kind of went with a look that I was happy with. So I've got this all built up with these Reynolds Wrap foil sheets. And once I'm happy with the size of it, I'm going to go ahead and get out my polymer clay. So this seems like this will work pretty well. Get it kind of pressed down. I don't want it to be too rough. Smooth it out some. Now I'll go ahead and get out some wax paper and start working with my polymer clay. So I'm using Premo Sculpey. I've got an 8-ounce block of black clay and a 2-ounce block of gray granite clay. And that's Premo also. And what I'm going to do is I'm mixing these together. Now the reason why is because I didn't want just solid black. I wanted it to have almost a stone look. I wanted some particles in there. That gray granite has little specks in there. And I thought that would be kind of a neat look to it if you look closely at what was visible after I put on the character bust. So now I'm taking my mixture of gray granite and black clay and just kind of pressing it out some so it's not too thick, and then covering my entire foil sculpture. I want it to be about as even as possible. But another thing I want to make sure to do is I want to get rid of any imperfections that you would see from the foil. So I want it thick enough to cover those up. And any work I put into this now, as far as getting the shape how I want, will save me time later. So I want to make sure I can get this as, lack of a better word, as perfect as possible. I don't like to use that word because, my wife always tells me things in nature are not perfect, but to get it how I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish smoothing out some polymer clay to keep wrapping this up. Now one thing I want to do once I get this wrapped up is do the eye sockets. So once I get this all covered, I'm going to take my ball tool and press in where I want the eyes to be. So I'm just going to finish smoothing this out. Make sure I'm really happy with that, and then I'll go ahead and push in those eye sockets. And the reason why I'm doing this, so then I can add the clay on top of it and my eyes can sit in a little bit and they're not just resting on the front of my sculpture. Give it a little bit more depth. So I'm just going through, adjusting it, adding little bits of clay to any part that I feel needs bulked up just a little bit more. Make it a little bit more smooth and make sure it has the exact look that I want. All right, now that I'm pretty happy with this, I'm going to go ahead and poke some air holes in it so that way any trapped air in there doesn't expand and distort my sculpture. Finish this up, make sure it's even. Had some excess there on the bottom I just went ahead and cut off. There's no reason to waste clay. Now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to preheat my oven and bake this according to package instructions. Now, once this is baked, I'll let it cool down. Went ahead and set up my desk. I've got my reference pictures. So even though this is my own creation, it's been 3 years since I sculpted this guy the first time, so I wanted to have a reference picture plus the digital artwork that Axton has created for me. Now, for the base color for my mascot monster, I'm using yellow mixed with pearl. And I do this because I want it to have a little bit of a shine, a little bit of a metallic look to it. So, and I went ahead and added a little bit more white to lighten up my yellows a little bit just darker than what I wanted. Once I've got that all mixed up, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands. Even though I'm still working with it, I didn't want to get too much of the yellow on areas of my character bust that would not be covered with yellow, if that makes sense. So I'm doing the exact same thing that I did when I did the black. I'm just rolling it out or pressing it out so it's a pretty even thickness, and I'm going to go ahead and apply it to my character bust base that I made in the first section of this video. So you'll see I'm just going to go ahead and cover it completely, and then I'll start adding some of the features. Now, you can use liquid Sculpey or Bacon Bond to attach pieces as you add to it, but since I'm covering this completely, I'm not worried about anything coming off, so I'm just going to go ahead and not worry about using anything like that. Now for the eyes, I am sculpting around them, so that way they're a little bit deeper. So when I drop my eyeballs in there, they have that depth. And I'm going to go ahead and bulk up his face or cover his face, even though I'm going to do another piece on top. I do want that jaw of his to be sticking out a little bit. So I'm smoothing in more of my yellow and pearl mixture. And I'm just using some different tools. Most of the time I use my fingers, but I'll also use my tool to kind of blend it and get it to really cover up, smooth in those areas, and then I'll take my finger and smooth it out even more. But the tool will get in there deeper and, move that clay where I want it to go. The next thing I'm going to do is sculpt out his ears. Now, I'm not going to attach these yet, but the main reason why I wanted to sculpt these out now is to make sure I had enough of my yellow and pearl mixture made up before I did any more sculpting on it. So I've just got these shaped out. I do them as one big piece, as you see here. It almost looks like a pod for some pea pods, but then I cut it in half and then just trim it down so my ears are as close to symmetrical as they can be, at least as far as the length. So I'm just shaping them out, make sure I'm happy with them. And reminder, I do have my reference material off to the side. Now that I'm happy with those ears, I'm going to set those aside, and I know I've got enough clay, so all I need to do is make the jaw. So with the extra clay I have here, I want to go ahead and bulk up my shoulder area. I want it to be a little bit wider, have more of a triangular shape. I think it have a better look to it. So I'm just softening that back up, spreading it out, and smoothing it in with my fingers. So look like it's all one piece when it's done. I don't want it to look like it's patchy or I just added a bunch of pieces. So just keep going over it until I am happy with it. So I really like how this yellow looks with that pearl. I don't know how well that's showing up on camera, but it just has a nice shiny look to it. Now I thought about adding some texture there, and you can see I didn't like it. So I'm just smoothing that back out. Even though the original didn't have texture, I like to try some different things, and I like doing a lot of textures on things. So I did notice his head here wasn't quite the shape I wanted it to be, so I bulked it up a little bit with some more. Using my ball tool to make sure my eye sockets are staying the size I want them to be. And I'm just adding a little bit more clay to the head, smoothing out anything that I see needs fixed. So I'll just go through, adjust it, touch up little bits and pieces here on those little specks, clean those out, and then smooth them back over. And then I thought it'd be fun to add some little wrinkles to the back of his neck. Now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands again. To do that a lot on this project. And I'm going to take some translucent clay, it's actually white translucent, and some white clay. I'm going to mix this up to make his tooth. So lots of times when I make teeth for monsters, I'll add a little bit of yellow, but since he's got so much yellow in his, he's all yellow, I want to make sure that I've got a nice contrast there. So I made his little tooth, took my needle tool to add some little ridges to the top, and then I'm just getting that in place right below his left eye. Now I'm going to go ahead and sculpt out his lower jaw. So he always has his little underbite with his tooth, and he's got his lip that kind of not really curls, but has a little bit of a movement to it. And so I'm going to go ahead now and smooth that in. Again, I want to smooth in my clay to make it look like it's all one piece. I don't want it to look patchworky. Now I'm just taking my needle tool and adding some little ridges to his lips Don't want him to look dry and cracked, but I want him to have some texture to him. Got a little speck, I'll clean that out. Added a little indention for his chin. Now I was really concerned about these ears drooping. I can't remember what I did on the original Mascot sculpture. Like I said, that's been over 3 years ago since I made that. So I thought I'll use some wire and put that in there. So I'm getting the wire in there. I had some trouble getting it through because remember it's got to go through the yellow clay, which is unbaked, the black clay that is baked, and then the tightly formed foil. Well, so I've got those in there and I'm attaching these ears, and then it was just like poking through too much. So I thought, well, I'll just shorten it up. That'll still give it some support. And I'm still just mangling this right ear of his, and I'm like, this is not going to work. I'm not happy how this is turning out. I'm getting a little bit stressed at this point. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take those wires out. I don't like what it's doing. They're too hard to navigate through because this isn't a very thick piece. If it was a thicker piece, it'd be easier to do. But I'm like, I'm just going to go ahead, attach these ears, and worry about that later because they're going to be fine right now. What I'm worried about is when they bake, because polymer clay has a tendency to droop when it bakes, and then it'll snap off if it's something that's not supported. So I'm just going to go ahead and get these on there, smooth them in, and then finish my sculpt and go from there. So I'm just adding some texture, trying some different poses. I've watched a lot of The Mandalorian. I love how Grogu's ears kind of flop around, and I thought, well, maybe I could try something a little bit different, but nothing was really hitting with me on how I wanted. So I just kind of did my standard look for them. Went ahead and washed my hands again. I'm going to start working on the spots. And for the spots, to give them kind of a shine like the body, I'm mixing purple and pearl together. And I get sidetracked. I notice something that needs fixed, so I stop and fix that. And then I'll get back to mixing up that purple and pearl. So I'm just kind of an ADD sculptor, but I've gotten that mixed up. I kind of section it off, press it out a little bit before I put it on there, and then press it in. I don't mind if they stick out a little bit, but I don't want them to stick out too much. And I'm trying to match the best I can with my original sculpt and Axton's artwork, but there's some areas that just don't show, like his shoulder. I don't think I did anything in that area because of the way his arm was, so I kind of had to improvise and do something a little bit different. But I wanted to have the general same look and fairly the same placement of spots as my original. So I'm just going through, getting those all added. And I don't know why, but I think it's very therapeutic. It's a lot of fun to add spots or stripes and even textures to my sculptures. It's time consuming, but it's relaxing at the same time, and it's fun to see the sculpture transition to something else. So now that I'm happy with my spots, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands again. And now I'm going to mix up or soften up some white for the eyes. And I'm already getting little specks in that. But I mixed in some pearl to hopefully not have as much issue and give it a little bit of a shine. So I've got white and pearl mixed together. Roll it out into a couple balls for the eyes. Try to get them as close to the same size as possible. I don't want them to stick out too much. Clean those up. I was not quite happy with this one. Just looked a little bit off. So now that, I'm going to go ahead and adjust this one again. I forgot I did that many times. Now I'm going to add some black to the center. So I'm just taking 2 little pieces of black polymer clay. Actually, 1 piece of black polymer clay. Then I'm going to cut it into 2 pieces. Make little circles out of that. Press those out and then press them up against the eyes. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands again since I went from white to black. And now I'm going to go back to white and do those little light reflections in the eyes. So I'm just taking some very small pieces of the white pearl mixture, pressing them out into little circles, and then adding them onto my eyes. So I'm actually going to do 2 on each eye. Give me this kind of cute cartoony look to him. Get those placed just how I wanted. I don't want them to look too wonky. And then I'm going to put the other ones just to the outside of the larger light reflection that's lower. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is clean them up. So I'm taking some rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip and just going over any spot that I see Any area where I feel like it needs smoothed out, or if there's any specks. Not worried about, I know I'm not going to get them perfect, but I want to clean them up the best I can. The last thing I'm going to do is add my initials. This isn't something I've done in about 10 years. When I first started sculpting, I thought, I want to do that when I make these character busts. I'd like to make a bunch of different ones, and I thought that would be fun to add my initials to it. So now back to the ears. What I decided to do was do these foil towers and stick them underneath the ears to give them some support. And I do remember one of my viewers had mentioned about adding a piece of paper at the top whenever you use foil to support, so it doesn't transfer that texture of the foil onto your sculpture. So I'm just going to fold up a little bit of paper there. Now I'm going to go ahead and bake according to package instructions. And here is the finished character bust of my mascot, William. I had a lot of fun making this. It was great to revisit this design of this character and to do him in a different style. I hope you guys really enjoyed today's video. I really want to make a lot more character busts. In fact, my viewers have already given me a lot of ideas, but I could always use more. So if you have ideas for other things you'd like to see in this character bust style, please leave it in the comments down below. Also, if you have an idea for what I should call this style, you can also leave that in the comments down below. The only thing that's kind of coming to my head is Desktop Buddy, but I'm not set on that yet, so that's why I didn't put that in the title or in the thumbnail. So, alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video, and remember, never stop creating. Bye! If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Also, be sure to check out one of these other great videos. And if you want to support my channel, please visit my Etsy shop or TeePublic Store. I have links to both in the description box below.